The purpose of these before drawings is actually for you to just try drawing something and seeing what you do without instruction. The whole point of that assessment is not for you to understand what to do with it quite yet. It's not about you using it to understand your skill level. What's going to happen is you're going to be able to use it that way once you're at the end of this program and you draw this again and you compare your drawing in the same amount of time. That's one reason I ask you to document the time. So I ask you to document how much time you take, because that's how much time I want you to take the next time you draw this at the very end of the program, because that's the way you're going to be able to put these side by side and go, okay, what's different now? Do I see that I have better likeness in some areas? Is there something I see that's still kind of stuck that I could ask for feedback on so that I know what else to be practicing in the future? These are measuring sticks. These are like grades without the A, B, C, D, E, F kind of nonsense. It's not about evaluating how good or bad you are. It's about sussing out where you're at with your drawing skill and then comparing it after instruction to see what you've learned and also what else you can continue to learn. So you can do these once every 6 months. You could do them once a year. I do suggest kind of waiting at least usually 6 months, but with a program like this, right, I think because it's concentrated study and focus, after 8 or 9 weeks, I think you could come back again and apply and see some changes. But typically speaking, if you're not in a program that's focused on this kind of focused studied learning, then I'd say every 6 months you could do the same drawing or painting, or you could pick a new image, but then you take a photograph every 6 months of whatever you've been working on, and you have this documentation of your actual skill development and growth. And because there's distance between these drawings or these artworks, you can actually see the difference in them. So you don't necessarily have to have a teacher like myself to give you that feedback to help you see things, though I will say that's one reason it's helpful to have a mentor or peers in a group space that you trust, where you can show them your assessments and go, okay, what do you guys see that's the same or different? What do you think I could be working on? What do you think I'm really good at? That's the point of these activities. So when I look at this, I know that Kat spent 15 minutes on it. One thing I'd immediately note is that use of outline. So that's something I think she might be more dependent on, is outlining objects as she draws things. I actually think it has a really nice stylized quality in this image, so I think that's something that could work in her favor in developing a style. However, if we're working realistically and we look at this image of these plant leaves, there's no the outline actually of these plants is a white line because they're all highlighted. So let's just convert this to black and white and look at that real quickly. Right, so if we look at the outline of these plants here, there's white lines. It's almost, there's like a white outline that's edges, and then everything is dark in the middle. And that's something you can see. She did see that shift in value change in her own drawing. That's something that's obvious in the way she's approached her drawing. So it's clear she has a sense of direction and movement. She has a grasp of value study, and she uses outline to place and study her objects. So then we could say, okay, so to challenge Catherine, I could say, let's really ditch those outlines. What will it look like in your art if you, or in your activities this month, right? These next 8 weeks, if you just focus on not using outlines, how would that change your work? What would you learn by doing that? And then a simple thing to think about, which is hard in 15 minutes, but technically then with this drawing, I'll go back to the black and white version of this image. How much white space is there in that photograph? So think about that for a minute, right? These are the little details that you guys can't always necessarily spot, and especially when you might make a short amount of time for your work, and that's totally fine, because remember, again, comfort zone and making quick decisions. But there's like little shapes of white all around here with all the grass, but really none of the leaves really have white in them except for the edge. Here's a white highlight. So there's a shape here that's almost a white highlight. It's a very, very soft gray. Most of these are a soft gray, but you've got like little bits of white highlight here, right? So there's little pieces here and there that might have a little bit, but that means everything else is a dark gray. So in fact, for this drawing, it might actually be easier to start out with kind of a wash of a medium gray tone. So instead of using your pencil and trying to draw everything, use your value scale to pick one of these lighter tones, and then actually kind of fill in the whole space with a pencil in this middle tone, and then use an eraser as a tool to show those lines. So instead of drawing with your pencil, you use your pencil as a wash, like almost like a watercolor wash, and then draw out the whites with an eraser. And because you used a middle tone that's not super dark, you can easily erase away to create those lighter tones. If you have an image in general that's really mostly darks, then create a wash of tone and draw into it with white, or use a toned paper. You could even use a toned paper and then have a white charcoal pencil and then have a black charcoal pencil and kind of play with those gradations of stuff if that's something that appeals to you. So that's the same with a face, right? So if you have an image that's mostly dark, fill in all of those tones, get rid of as much white as you can, because that's generally speaking when people have a finished drawing, a lot of times there's a lot of white space left in their artwork that if they really spend the time to look at that photo reference, they'll notice that white actually isn't part of the image. It's kind of one of those ideas that we have in our head of what should be in art. If you guys want feedback like this on your baseline assessments, you're more than welcome to ask me, and I want you guys to have that for food for thought. But two, I don't want you to keep playing with this image. I do want you to store it away because I want you to be able to play with these ideas as we move through the rest of these units so that you can then come back to this and really have an opportunity to try it again with fresh eyes and compare so that you can reflect and really see the difference yourself. That's the thing, right? We can look on Instagram and compare ourselves to other artists all the time, and we all do it, you know, wherever we go on social media and see people who make art that intimidates us or we feel is better than our own. But that's not going to actually change or inform the way we make our art. That's not going to help us make better art. It might motivate us, and that can be helpful. We might get ideas for them for style. That's also very helpful. But if we really want to understand our own growth, we need to compare ourselves to ourselves. We need to compare ourselves to ourselves. And the best way to do this is to create a baseline assessment, which is your very first one, and then to periodically have assessments where you check in. And it could be, like I said, you create a date on your calendar, and whatever artwork you've made at that 6-month mark or that year mark, you take a photograph of that artwork. You don't have to use the same artwork the whole time for those of you who get bored or feel a little rebellious against using the same image. If really understanding your growth is your priority, then using the same image makes it super clear over time how you're growing and what you can do. And again, having that understanding of how much time you're spending in addition to what you achieve, that's all, like in terms of what you have as an outcome for your artwork, the activity, that is really helpful information and makes it kind of this measurable thing for you as an artist. GIMP's a wonderful tool. It's completely free to use, and I think it's just gimp.org that you can go to download it. It's a free tool that works both, I think, on PC and Mac. I'm not entirely sure. But something too, like even on if you have a tablet or an Android or a smartphone of any kind, it's easy with your camera. There's an edit option when you go into your photos, and you can click on edit, and there's opportunities to change it into black and white or to change your contrast. And that can also help you see things too, even though you might not create a grid on top of it that way. But any tools you guys can use can be really, really helpful to help you spot these things and better catch the things that maybe you don't see the first time around. Kat says, thanks, Carrie. You are very welcome. And Donna says, GIMP sounds interesting. We'll have to check it out. Yeah, it's a free tool similar to Photoshop. It can be a little uncomfortable to use at first, so give yourself some time to play with it if you haven't used a tool like Photoshop before, but it can be quite helpful.